the fog-choked gloom of 1930s London, Briar Lane Hospital stood as a somber sentinel, its Gothic spires piercing the night. The air was thick with carbolic and dread, the silence broken only by Big Ben's distant toll. In a private ward, Sir Reginald Beaumont's breaths rasped, each one a battle against death's grasp. Nurse Evelyn Hart, her hands unsteady, administered his dose. "Rest now, sir," she whispered. But as midnight struck, a guttural gasp shattered the quiet. Sir Reginald convulsed, his eyes accusing. "Poison," whispered the shadows. "Who wielded it?" The hospital held its breath, secrets festering. Chapter 1. The Shadow in the Ward. The fog clung to the cobblestones of Briar Lane like a shroud, muffling the distant clatter of horse-drawn cabs and the faint wail of a police whistle somewhere in the labyrinthine sprawl of 1930s London. Briar Lane Hospital loomed at the street's end, a Gothic edifice of weathered stone, its arched windows glowing faintly against the autumn night's oppressive gloom. Within its walls, the air was thick with the antiseptic tang of carbolic soap, undercut by something less tangible, a creeping unease that seemed to seep from the very mortar. The clock tower above the entrance tolled midnight, each chime reverberating through the deserted corridors, a somber knell that heralded the unfolding of a tragedy. In a private ward on the third floor, Sir Reginald Beaumont lay propped against starched pillows, his gaunt frame a mere shadow of the robust industrialist who had once commanded boardrooms with an iron will. At 62, his wealth had bought him the finest care, yet no fortune could stave off the ravages of his failing heart. His breath came in shallow, rattling gasps, each one a labored defiance of the inevitable. The room was austere, its walls papered in faded green, the only adornments a brass crucifix above the bed and a chipped porcelain wash basin on a stand. A single gas lamp flickered, casting long shadows that danced like specters across the floor. Nurse Cockney accent slipping through. Despite her efforts to maintain decorum, she stepped back, clutching the empty vial, her knuckles whitening. The clock on the mantel ticked relentlessly, its hands creeping toward 1 o'clock. Outside, the fog thickened, swallowing the street lamp's feeble glow. Sir Reginald's breathing grew erratic, each inhale a struggle against an invisible weight. His fingers twitched, clawing at the bedsheet as if grasping for life itself. Then a guttural gasp tore from his throat, raw and primal. His body convulsed, limbs jerking in a grotesque parody of dance. His eyes, wide with terror, locked onto Evelyn's. "You," he choked, spittle flecking his lips. "What have you done?" The words hung in the air, accusatory and final, as his body arched once more before collapsing into stillness. His eyes remained open, staring blankly at the ceiling, their glassy surface reflecting the flickering lamp. Death had claimed him, swift and merciless. Evelyn stood frozen, the syringe slipping from her hand to clatter on the floor. Her breath came in sharp, panicked bursts as she backed toward the door. No, it can't be," she whispered, her voice barely audible over the pounding of her pulse. She fumbled for the door handle, her fingers slick with sweat, and stumbled into the corridor. "Help!" she cried, her voice echoing through the empty hall. "Someone, please!" Footsteps thundered in response, a cacophony of urgency breaking the hospital's eerie quiet. Dr. Elias Thorne, the attending physician, was the first to arrive, his angular face taut with alarm. His dark eyes, sharp as a scalpel, took in the scene. Sir Reginald's twisted form, the spilled syringe, Evelyn's ashen face. "What happened here?" he demanded, his voice clipped, betraying a hint of unease beneath his professional veneer. He knelt beside the bed, pressing fingers to Sir Reginald's wrist, then his neck, searching for a pulse that no longer existed. "He's gone," Thorne pronounced, straightening with a curt nod. "Top fortune." Another nurse recalled his recent agitation, his mutterings about betrayal and healers who harm. The word poison surfaced, tentative at first, then bold, spreading like contagion among the staff. Dr. Thorne's jaw tightened, his gaze flickering to the vial in Matron Graves's hand. "We must notify the police," he said, his tone betraying a trace of reluctance. "This is beyond our expertise." As the staff dispersed to summon the authorities, Evelyn sank into a chair, her hands covering her face. Her mind raced, replaying the moment she had drawn the dose. Had she checked the vial thoroughly? The label had seemed correct, but the patient's reaction. It was not the gentle drift of morphine's embrace. It was violent, unnatural. Her thoughts spiraled to her own secrets, Sir Reginald's knowledge of her illicit affair with a married orderly, his veiled threats to expose her. Had someone tampered with the medicine to silence him? Or to frame her? The hospital's corridors grew hushed again, save for the distant wail of a siren approaching through the fog. Inspector Japp of Scotland Yard would soon arrive, his gruff demeanor a stark contrast to the hospital's sterile order. But another figure loomed in the narrative's shadows, Hercule Poirot, the diminutive Belgian detective with a mind as sharp as the syringe now lying discarded. Summoned by a solicitor's urgent telegram, Poirot was en route, his little gray cells already poised to unravel the enigma of Briar Lane. Yet the ward held its secrets close. A crumpled note, unnoticed in the chaos, lay tucked beneath Sir Reginald's pillow. "Beware the healer who harms." Its ink was fresh, its message cryptic. The vial, too, bore a clue, a faint scratch on its glass, as if pried open and resealed. The hospital, a place of healing, had become a stage for murder, its players masked in white coats and starched caps. Who among them had orchestrated this macabre end? Dr. Thorne, with his nervous glances, Matron Graves with her iron grip on the ward, or Evelyn, whose tears might conceal a darker, untimely demise. The third-floor ward, now cordoned off by a stern-faced constable, buzzed with the low hum of speculation. Nurses whispered in corners, their starched caps bobbing like ghostly lanterns, while orderlies shuffled past, avoiding the sealed door where death had struck. The scent of carbolic soap mingled with the faint metallic tang of fear, an atmosphere thick with secrets waiting to be unearthed. Inspector Japp of Scotland Yard paced the corridor, his heavy boots thudding against the polished floor. His mustache twitched with irritation as he reviewed his notes, scribbled hastily in the small hours. "Poison, that's certain," he muttered to his sergeant, a lanky youth named Collins, who nodded eagerly. "Arsenic, judging by the convulsions and that ghastly look on his face. But how the devil did it get into him?" The room was locked. The nurse swears she followed protocol, and the medicine vial's label checks out. Japp's eyes narrowed as he glanced toward the ward. "Something's not right, Collins. This place reeks of foul play." Into this tense tableau stepped Hercule Poirot, his arrival as precise as the ticking of a Swiss watch. The diminutive Belgian detective, clad in an immaculate black suit with a neatly pinned cravat, cut a striking figure against the hospital's austere backdrop. His polished shoes clicked softly on the floor, and his waxed mustache gleamed under the gaslight. a beacon of order in the chaos. His green eyes, sharp as cut emeralds, surveyed the scene with a quiet intensity that belied his unassuming stature. A telegram from Sir Reginald's solicitor, Mr. Harrow, had summoned him urgently, citing a matter of grave concern at Briar Lane Hospital. Poirot, never one to resist a puzzle, had arrived with his little gray cells already whirring. "Ah, mon ami Jap," Poirot's voice, melodious with its Belgian lilt, cut through the corridor's tension like a scalpel. "It is always a pleasure, even under such somber circumstances. A locked room, a dead man, and whispers of poison. Très intéressant, no?" Jap, orderly, sat in an evidence bag. Poirot's gaze lingered on the vial, its label slightly askew, the ink suspiciously fresh. He leaned closer, inhaling deeply. A faint, bitter scent. Almonds, perhaps? Not arsenic then, but cyanide. A discrepancy already, and Poirot's lips curved in a faint smile. He turned to Nurse Evelyn Hart, who stood by the window, her hands twisting the hem of her apron. Her auburn hair, though pinned tightly, betrayed a strand that fell across her pale cheek, and her eyes, red-rimmed from crying, darted nervously. "Mademoiselle Hart," Poirot began, his tone gentle but probing. "You administered the fatal dose, oui? Tell me, precisely, what occurred?" Evelyn's breath hitched and she swallowed hard. I gave him his morphine, as Dr. Thorne prescribed. 10 milligrams. From that vial." She pointed a trembling finger at the tray. "I checked it myself, Monsieur Poirot. It was correct, I swear it. But then..." He gasped, convulsed, and... Her voice broke and she buried her face in her hands. Poirot's eyes softened, but his mind remained razor-sharp. "And this vial, it was untouched before you used it. No one else handled it?" Evelyn shook her head vehemently. "No, sir. It came from the pharmacy, sealed as always." Yet her gaze flickered, a telltale sign of withheld truth. Poirot noted it, filing it away among the myriad threads of this intricate tapestry. Matron Lydia Graves entered next, her presence as commanding as a battleship. Her severe bun and starched apron gave her the air of an institution unto herself, and her voice carried the weight of 20 years' authority. "Monsieur Poirot," she said, her tone clipped. "This hospital runs like clockwork. Sir Reginald was a difficult patient, demanding, arrogant. But he died of natural causes. His heart was failing. The autopsy will confirm it." Poirot raised an eyebrow. Something had been pried open. He knelt, inspecting the floor, and retrieved a single thread of dark wool, foreign to the hospital's sterile linens. "Curieux," he murmured, slipping it into a handkerchief. "The smallest detail. It speaks volumes." He questioned Evelyn further, pressing gently but relentlessly. "You cared for Sir Reginald for weeks, oui? Did he speak of enemies? Of secrets?" Evelyn hesitated, her eyes darting to the door. He mentioned a business rival once, someone from his colonial ventures. And he was harsh with me. Said he knew things about my past." Her voice dropped to a whisper. "He threatened to ruin me." Poirot's mustache twitched. A motive, perhaps? Blackmail was a powerful catalyst. Dr. Elias Thorne, summoned from his rounds, entered with a brisk stride. His angular face, framed by prematurely graying hair, betrayed a flicker of unease as he met Poirot's gaze. Monsieur Poirot, I trust you'll find this a simple matter, he said, his voice smooth but edged with tension. Sir Reginald was my patient for months. His condition was terminal. Death was expected. Poirot tilted his head. Expected, docteur? Yet the manner of it, poison, in a locked ward, is most unexpected. You prescribed the morphine, oui? And you saw him last when? Thorne's fingers drummed on his stethoscope. Around 9 o'clock, during my evening rounds. He was stable then, but his eyes avoided Poirot's, and the detective noted the nervous tick. A red herring surfaced. A missing syringe from the pharmacy reported by Matron Graves suggested an outsider's interference. Yet Poirot's instincts leaned inward. The hospital staff, he said to Japp. They are the key. The locked room is not so locked when trust is broken. As the morning wore on, Poirot explored the ward's periphery, noting the garden path below the window, its mud churned by recent footprints. A groundskeeper confirmed no staff were assigned there at midnight. Someone entered or whispered, his eyes narrowing. The killer seeks to erase their trail, or to plant a new one. The hospital's shadows deepened, the air heavy with unspoken accusations. Poirot's gaze lingered on the suspects, Evelyn's tearful panic, Thorne's guarded composure, Graves' steely defiance. The note's warning echoed in his mind. Beware the healer who harms. Who was the healer? And what harm lurked beneath the hospital's pristine facade? As the clock struck noon, the mystery tightened its grip, a psychological labyrinth that promised no easy escape. Chapter 3. Whispers Among the Staff. The morning sun struggled to pierce the heavy drapes of Briar Lane Hospital's library, a cavernous room lined with leather-bound medical tomes and the musty scent of forgotten knowledge. Hercule Poirot sat at a polished oak table, his small, meticulous hands arranging a notebook and pen with the precision of a chess master. The air was thick with dust motes, swirling in the faint light like secrets suspended in time. Outside, the fog of 1930s London had retreated, but within these walls a different kind of haze prevailed, one woven from suspicion and half-truths. The scream from the morgue still echoed in Poirot's mind, a stark reminder that the killer was not content to let Sir Reginald Beaumont's death remain a singular tragedy. Inspector Japp, his face flushed from the sprint to the morgue, stood by the library door, barking orders to his sergeant. Secure the body, Collins, and find out who is on duty down there. Someone's tampered with evidence, and I'll have their hide. His voice carried the rough edge of a man grappling with a case slipping through his fingers. Poirot, however, remained serene, his green eyes scanning the room as if it held the key to the puzzle. Calm yourself, mon ami, he said, his Belgian accent a soothing counterpoint to Japp's agitation. The tampering, it is a desperate act. It tells us the killer is close, and they fear exposure. Poirot had requested private interviews with the hospital's key figures, and the library with his morphine, no? And you were in the ward at 9 o'clock. But where at midnight? Thorne's jaw tightened. In my office, reviewing charts. My assistant can confirm it. Poirot noted the deflection, and a new piece of the puzzle emerged. A hospital ledger revealed Thorne was named in Sir Reginald's will, set to receive a substantial sum for a research fund. A coincidence, I assure you, Thorne said, his voice strained. I'm no pauper, despite rumors of financial strain. Poirot's smile was enigmatic. Debts, perhaps gambling, whispered among the staff, gave Thorne a motive as sharp as his scalpel. Next came Nurse Evelyn Hart, her auburn hair now disheveled, her eyes red from sleeplessness and tears. She clutched a handkerchief, her hands trembling as she sat across from Poirot. "Mademoiselle," he began gently, "you cared for Sir Reginald with devotion. Yet he caused you distress, oui?" Evelyn's breath hitched. "He was cruel, monsieur. He found out about my indiscretion. An affair with an orderly, a married man. Sir Reginald threatened to report me, to ruin my career." Her voice broke, and she dabbed at her eyes. "I cared for him like a father. But he turned on me." Poirot's expression softened, but his mind catalogued her words. Blackmail was a potent motive, and her access to the fatal vial made her a suspect, however pitiable. Matron Lydia Graves entered last, her presence as formidable as the hospital itself. Her gray eyes, cold as the morgue's tiles, met Poirot's without flinching. "This is a waste of time, monsieur," she declared, her voice resonant with authority. "Briar Lane is impeccable. Sir Reginald's death is a tragedy, but natural. His heart was weak, his demands excessive. He insisted on experimental treatments, digitalis, new serums. Perhaps his own folly killed him." Poirot tilted his head. "And yet, madame, the note, 'Beware the healer who harms,' suggests intent. A sign there at midnight. Yet the prints were fresh, their edges sharp in the damp earth." Poirot's methodical approach took shape. He requested hospital records, poring over Sir Reginald's chart. The patient had been stable until that fateful dose, his symptoms consistent with cyanide, not heart failure. The autopsy still pending would confirm it, but Poirot needed no coroner to tell him poison was the culprit. He cross-referenced staff schedules. Evelyn had been alone with Sir Reginald. Thorne had access to the pharmacy. Graves controlled the ward's rhythm. Each had opportunity. Each had motive. But the tampering in the morgue, a crude incision, as if searching for a hidden clue, suggested desperation. Had the killer sought to retrieve something from the body? A swallowed note, perhaps, or a planted decoy? As noon approached, Poirot stepped into the corridor, where whispers among the staff grew fevered. An orderly recounted Sir Reginald's final days, his paranoia about enemies in white coats. A nurse mentioned a mysterious visitor, cloaked and unseen, who had inquired about Sir Reginald's condition days before. Red herring or clue? Poirot's mind sifted through the noise, seeking the signal. He returned to the ward, re-examining the scene. The crumpled note, now in Japp's custody, bore no fingerprints, a curious absence. The vial's scratch suggested tampering, but by whom? And why risk such an act in a locked room? Evelyn, summoned again, broke under Poirot's gentle probing. "He knew about my child," she confessed, her voice a whisper. "A daughter, born out of wedlock, hidden away. Sir Reginald found out, threatened to expose me unless I spied on Dr. Thorne for him." Poirot's eyes narrowed. "Spied, mademoiselle? On what?" Evelyn shook her head, tears spilling. "He wouldn't say. Just watch the doctor. I didn't do it, I swear." Her confession added a layer to the mystery. Sir Reginald, manipulative even in his final days, had wielded secrets like, "He mocked my dedication," she admitted, her voice low. "Called me a glorified maid." Resentment, Poirot mused, was a slow-burning poison. As evening fell, the hospital's lights flickered, casting eerie shadows. Poirot, compiling his notes, sensed the net tightening. The red herrings, missing syringe, mysterious visitor were distractions, but the footprints, the note, the vial's scratch pointed to an inside job. Then, a new shock. A nurse's cry from the basement pharmacy. A vial of cyanide, marked for research, was missing. Jap cursed, his frustration mounting. "They're one step ahead, Poirot." But the detective's smile was serene. "Non, mon ami. They are running, and runners always leave tracks." As Poirot stepped into the fog-laden courtyard, a shadow moved in the periphery. A figure, cloaked, vanishing into the mist. Friend or foe? The note's warning echoed. "Beware the healer who harms." The hospital, a sanctuary of healing, was a nest of vipers, and Poirot's little gray cells were alight with the challenge. The truth was close, but danger closer still. Chapter 4. The Heir's Shadow. The fog of 1930s London clung to the streets like a conspirator, muffling the clatter of hooves and the distant hum of motor cars as Hercule Poirot stepped from Briar Lane Hospital into the gray dusk. The hospital's Gothic facade loomed behind him, its windows glowing like the eyes of a watchful beast. Inside, the air had grown heavier, laden with the weight of whispered accusations and the faint, lingering scent of cyanide. The missing vial from the pharmacy, discovered only hours ago, had tightened the noose of suspicion around the staff, yet the killer remained a phantom, slipping through the cracks of Poirot's meticulous net. His little gray cells thrummed with purpose as he hailed a cab to Sir Reginald Beaumont's estate, a grand Georgian manor just beyond the city's edge, where the next thread of the mystery awaited. The drawing room of Beaumont House was a study in faded opulence, crimson velvet draped. He produced a crumpled pair from his pocket, sliding them across the table with a smirk. Poirot's green eyes narrowed as he examined them, noting the date, but also the faint creases suggesting they'd been handled more than once. "A fine alibi," Poirot murmured. "But alibis, they can be arranged, oui." Victor's smirk faltered. "Look, I know how it seems. Uncle was a miser, hoarding his wealth while I scraped by. Yes, I inherit everything, millions, properties, the lot. Motive enough, I suppose. But I didn't kill him. I was nowhere near that blasted hospital." His voice carried a petulant edge, and Poirot noted the tremor in his hand as he lit another cigarette. Greed, the detective mused, was a motive as old as Cain, but Victor's bravado masked something deeper, fear perhaps, or guilt. Poirot's investigation had already unearthed Sir Reginald's past, a tapestry of ruthless ambition woven through colonial ventures in India and Africa. His wealth, built on rubber plantations and diamond mines, had left a trail of enemies, business rivals, displaced workers, even a former partner who had cursed him on his deathbed a decade prior. Yet the hospital remained the epicenter of this psychological thriller, its sterile corridors hiding a darker truth. Poirot turned to Jap, who was leafing through a dossier on Sir Reginald. "His enemies, Inspector. They are many. But the poison? It is intimate. Someone close, someone trusted." Jap nodded, his mustache twitching. "We've got a new lead, Poirot. A poisoned chocolate in Sir Reginald's bedside drawer. Cyanide, same as the vial. Found it this morning, tucked behind his spectacles." He produced a small evidence bag, the chocolate's gold foil glinting ominously. "Nurse Hart says it came from an anonymous donor,
delivered to the ward 2 days ago. She thought it a kind gesture. Poirot's eyes gleamed. Anonymous, you say? The killer hides in plain sight, using sweetness to mask death. He examined the foil, noting a faint smudge of ink, a partial fingerprint perhaps. Wastrel. Threatened to cut me out of his will. Said he'd leave it all to some quack doctor for research. But I didn't need to kill him. His heart was failing. Poirot's mustache twitched. The will, altered recently, was a key piece. Sir Reginald had indeed named Dr. Thorne as a beneficiary, a fact Victor seemed unaware of, or was he? The detective shifted to the hospital's dynamics. Evelyn's confession about her illegitimate child and Sir Reginald's blackmail painted her as a victim, but also a suspect with access. Thorne's gambling debts, confirmed by a discreet inquiry to his bookmaker, gave him reason to hasten Sir Reginald's end. Graves, with her iron grip on the ward, had motive in her rivalry with a new clinic funded by the victim. And Victor, with his inheritance at stake, had the most to gain. Yet the morgue tampering, a crude incision to retrieve or plant something, suggested a conspiracy, or at least a killer desperate to cover their tracks. Poirot requested Sir Reginald's correspondence, delivered by the solicitor, Mr. Harrow. A letter dated a week prior caught his eye. A warning from an anonymous source, urging Sir Reginald to beware the hospital's shadow. The handwriting matched the note by the bed, its ink fresh and distinct. A pattern emerges, Poirot murmured, his fingers tracing the paper. The killer taunts, but why? To frighten, or to mislead? Jap, impatient, pressed for answers. Come on, Poirot, give us a theory. Was it the nephew, sneaking in to slip him the chocolate, or the nurse cracking under his threats? Poirot's smile was serene. Theories, mon ami, are premature. But consider, the chocolate. It is personal. Someone knew Sir Reginald's fondness for sweets, a detail not widely shared. He recalled Evelyn's statement. She had delivered the chocolates, unaware of their danger. Was she an unwitting pawn or a clever actress? The footprints in the garden mud suggested an external entry, yet Victor's alibi placed him elsewhere. A theater usher, Poirot decided. The anonymous donor was no stranger. The psychological tension mounted, the manor's shadows mirroring the hospital's. Poirot returned to Briar Lane, where the staff's whispers had grown fevered. A nurse reported a strange incident. A cloaked figure seen near the pharmacy the previous week, inquiring about cyanide stocks. Red herring or clue? Poirot's mind sifted through the noise. The tampered morgue body suggested a killer still active, perhaps seeking a hidden clue, a swallowed note, a concealed object. As Poirot retired to his hotel, the fog thickened, cloaking London in secrecy. A figure watched from across the street, their silhouette blurred by mist. Friend or foe? The detective's instincts flared. He slipped the photograph of Victor and Sir Reginald into his pocket, a reminder of fractured ties. The chocolate, the note, the footprints all pointed to a calculated mind, one that thrived in deception. A sudden noise, a rustling in the hotel's courtyard, halted him. He peered into the darkness, glimpsing a shadow that vanished as quickly as it appeared. Mon Dieu, he whispered, his hand tightening on his cane. The killer was near, their steps echoing in the fog. The mystery of Briar Lane Hospital deepened, its threads tightening around a truth as elusive as the mist itself. The late afternoon light filtered through the high, arched windows of Briar Lane Hospital's archive room, casting a lattice of shadows across the oak-paneled walls. The air was thick with the scent of aged paper and mildew, a testament to decades of medical records stacked in towering shelves, their leather bindings cracked like the secrets they concealed. Hercule Poirot sat at a heavy desk, his small, meticulous hands sifting through yellowed files, his green eyes gleaming with the intensity of a hunter on the scent. The hospital, once a Victorian asylum repurposed in the post-war years of 1930s London, seemed to whisper its own history. A history that Poirot suspected held the key to Sir Reginald Beaumont's murder. The fog-out historical turn, after a whispered rumor among the nurses. Decades ago, a sinister doctor had haunted Briar Lane. A physician accused of experimental treatments that left patients dead under mysterious circumstances. The scandal had been hushed, the doctor dismissed, but his legacy lingered like a stain. Could Dr. Elias Thorne be his successor? A modern purveyor of death cloaked in a white coat. Poirot opened the file, his eyes scanning faded ink. Dr. Percival Langston, dismissed in 1918 for unethical practices, caught his attention. Langston had mentored a young Elias Thorne during his medical training, a connection buried in hospital lore but now glaringly relevant. Curieux, Poirot murmured, noting Langston's experiments with cyanide-based serums, ostensibly for pain relief, but suspected of euthanasia. The detective's little gray cells buzzed, weaving connections. Thorne's gambling debts, confirmed by a bookmaker's ledger, gave him a financial motive, amplified by Sir Reginald's will naming him a beneficiary. But this historical link suggested a darker impulse. Perhaps a learned disregard for life, passed from mentor to student. Poirot summoned Thorne to the archive, his arrival marked by a nervous cough. "Monsieur Poirot, this is absurd," Thorne said, his angular face pale under the dim light. "My training under Langston was brief, years ago. He was disgraced, yes, but I've built a reputable career." Poirot's gaze was unrelenting. "And yet, Docteur, cyanide, a tool of your mentor, finds its way to Sir Reginald. Your alibi for midnight, it falters. A nurse saw you near the ward, contrary to your claim." Thorne's fingers drummed on the desk, his composure fraying. "A mistake, surely. I was in my office, as I said." But his eyes darted to the file, betraying unease. Poirot pressed further. "Sir Reginald, he suspected you, no? He asked Nurse Hart to watch you." Thorne's jaw tightened. "He was paranoid, meddling in my work. He demanded exhaustion." Her hands clutched a rosary, its beads clicking softly as she sat. "Mademoiselle," Poirot began gently, "Sir Reginald's cruelty to you, it was profound, no? He blackmailed you over your child, your affair." Evelyn's eyes welled with tears. "He was merciless, monsieur. He said he'd tell the hospital board, ruin me. My daughter, she's all I have." Her voice broke, and Poirot's heart softened, but his mind remained sharp. "And the vial, you handled it alone?" She nodded, trembling. "I swear, it was morphine. I'd never harm him, no matter what he did." Yet her access and desperation made her a pawn, or a player, in this deadly game. Poirot's methodical approach crystallized. He listed clues. The scratched vial, suggesting tampering.
The note, its ink matching the anonymous letter to Sir Reginald, the wool thread, alien to the ward, the muddy footprints, indicating an inside job, and the poisoned chocolate, the true murder weapon. A red herring emerged, a stolen hospital key, found in Victor Beaumont's car, reported by an orderly. Planted, perhaps, Poirot mused to Japp, to shift blame to the air. The morgue tampering suggested a killer covering tracks, but what had they sought? A hidden clue, or a decoy to mislead? Japp, frustrated, pored over the autopsy preliminary report delivered that afternoon. "Cyanide confirmed," he said, slapping the paper. "In his stomach, likely from the chocolate. But the vial, it's clean, just morphine." Poirot's eyes gleamed. "A clever ruse, mon ami. The vial was meant to distract, to point to Nurse Hart. The chocolate, it is personal, intimate." He recalled Evelyn's delivery of the anonymous sweets, her unwitting role in the crime. But who had supplied them? Thorne, with his cyanide access, Graves, with her pharmacy oversight, or Victor, whose alibi was crumbling? The detective. "You?" She shook her head. "A delivery boy, no name. I thought it a kindness." Japp uncovered another clue. A cyanide trace in Thorne's private lab, hidden in a locked cabinet. "He's our man," Japp exclaimed. But Poirot demurred. "No, Inspector, of the evidence it is too convenient. A frame, perhaps." He noted Graves' prints on the pharmacy log, her access to the same cyanide. Her alibi for midnight, overseeing rounds, lacked witnesses. Victor's theater tickets, now proven from a matinee, placed him free that night. The web tightened, but the spider remained elusive. The hospital's atmosphere grew oppressive, the staff's whispers a chorus of fear. A nurse reported a strange noise, a clatter in the basement near the incinerator. Poirot and Japp investigated, finding charred remnants of a cloak, its wool matching the thread by Sir Reginald's bed. "The killer burns their traces," Poirot said, his voice low. "But they cannot burn the truth." The incinerator's heat lingered, a metaphor for the case's rising stakes. As Poirot stepped into the courtyard, a sudden blackout plunged the hospital into darkness. The gaslights sputtered out, leaving only the moon's pale glow. Footsteps echoed behind him, swift and deliberate. He turned, his cane raised, but saw only shadows. "Who is there?" he called, his voice steady despite the chill in his spine. No answer came, only the rustle of leaves in the fog. The killer was near, their presence a palpable threat. The mystery deepened, its psychological layers unraveling like a tapestry. Poirot's notebook filled with connections. Thorne's past, Graves' resentment, Evelyn's despair, Victor's greed, the chocolate, the note, the footprints, all pointed to a calculated mind, one that thrived in deception. As the clock struck 9, its chime a somber knell. Poirot knew the truth was close, but so was danger. The hospital's shadows whispered of betrayal, and the detective's little chapel, with its sacred stillness, seemed the perfect stage for a confession or a confrontation. Inspector Japp, his face etched with fatigue, lingered by the chapel door, his notebook clutched like a talisman. "This is a gamble, Poirot," he muttered, his Cockney accent thick with skepticism. "Dragging Victor Beaumont here at this hour.
What's it going to prove? The lad's slippery, I'll give you that. But a killer. Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile betraying his confidence. Mon ami, the guilty, they are drawn to the light of truth, even if they fear it. Victor, he hides something. And here, where the soul feels exposed, we shall see what spills forth. Victor Beaumont entered, his rakish charm dimmed by the late hour. His tailored suit was rumpled, his dark hair disheveled, and his pale blue eyes darted nervously, reflecting the candlelight like troubled waters. He lit a cigarette with unsteady hands, the smoke curling upward like a specter. "Monsieur Poirot, this is theatrical nonsense," he said, his voice edged with defiance. "Dragging me to a chapel at midnight? I told you I was at the theater when Uncle died. You've got your killer, Thorne, with his cyanide and debts." Poirot tilted his head, his gaze unrelenting. "No, Monsieur Victor. Your alibi. It is a house of cards. The tickets, they are from a matinee, not the evening show. Where were you at midnight, when Sir Reginald met his end?" Victor's cigarette paused mid-air, his smirk faltering. "All right. You've caught me in a lie," he admitted, exhaling a plume of smoke. "I wasn't at the theater. I was here, at the hospital, arguing with Uncle about my inheritance. He was cutting me out, said I was a disgrace. I left before midnight, I swear, stormed off to a pub in Whitechapel." His voice trembled, and Poirot noted the sweat beading on his brow. Greed, fear, and a lover's secret. Victor's affair with Nurse Evelyn Hart revealed in her early illegitimate daughter. Her affair with Victor, Sir Reginald's cruel blackmail, painted her as a desperate soul. Poirot summoned her to the chapel, her auburn hair now loose, her face a mask of anguish. She knelt by a pew, clutching her rosary, her eyes fixed on the altar's crucifix. "Mademoiselle," Poirot began, his voice gentle but probing. "You wished Sir Reginald dead, no? His threats, they crushed your spirit." Evelyn's sob was raw, echoing in the chapel's vaulted ceiling. "I did, monsieur. He was a monster, threatening my daughter's future. But I didn't kill him. I couldn't." Her voice broke, and Poirot noted the tremor in her hands. "The chocolate," he said. "You delivered it, unaware of its poison. Who gave it to you?" "A boy. A messenger," she whispered. "No name. Just a parcel left at the ward's desk. I thought it a kindness, a gift for Sir Reginald." Her tears fell, and Poirot's heart softened, but his mind remained sharp. A red herring surfaced, a suicide note found in Evelyn's quarters, penned in her hand but dated suspiciously after the murder. "A forgery," Poirot murmured to Jap, "to cast blame on her despair." Evelyn's role as an unwitting pawn grew clearer, but the question lingered. Who had orchestrated the delivery? Jap, restless, interrupted with new evidence. "We've got a breakthrough, Poirot. Cyanide traces in Thorne's lab, locked cabinet no less. He's our man, I'd stake my badge on it." Poirot raised a hand, his expression serene. "Patience, mon ami. The evidence, it is too neat, like a gift wrapped for us. Dr. Thorne, he is clever, but is he so careless?" The detective recalled Thorne's mentor, Dr. Langston, and his cyanide experiments, a legacy of death that Thorne might have inherited. Yet the planted key in Victor's car, the forged note in Evelyn's room, and the charred cloak suggested a broader conspiracy, or a killer framing others with surgical precision.
Pointing to an inside job. The forged note, framing Evelyn. And the tampered morgue body. A desperate act to conceal or retrieve evidence. The anonymous letter to Sir Reginald, warning of a hospital shadow, matched the bedside note's ink, suggesting a single hand. But whose? Thorne, with his cyanide access and debts? Graves, with her pharmacy oversight and resentment? Victor, with his greed and hospital visit? Or Evelyn, pushed beyond endurance? As midnight tolled, its chime reverberating through the chapel, a scream shattered the silence. A nurse, outside in the corridor, her voice raw with terror. Poirot and Japp rushed out, finding her trembling by a storage closet. Inside, another patient, an elderly woman in a nearby ward, lay dead, her symptoms mirroring Sir Reginald's. Bluish lips, convulsed limbs, the faint almond scent of cyanide. "Mon Dieu," Poirot whispered, his eyes narrowing. "The sinister doctor strikes again." The hospital, a place of healing, had become a killing ground, and the killer's audacity was growing. Japp cursed, his frustration boiling over. "Another one, Poirot. This is madness." But the detective's calm was unshaken. "No, Inspector. It is desperation. The killer fears exposure, and this second death, it is a message, or a mistake." He examined the new victim, noting a similar chocolate wrapper crumpled in her hand. "The same method," he murmured, "but bolder. They taunt us." The nurse reported seeing a cloaked figure near the ward earlier, vanishing into the basement. The incinerator's cloak, the footprints, the shadow in the fog, all pointed to a killer still active, still within reach. Poirot returned to the chapel, his mind racing. The second murder clarified the pattern. The killer targeted the vulnerable, using cyanide's swift embrace. But why? To silence witnesses? To sow chaos? The psychological weight of the case pressed down, a thriller unfolding in the hospital's sacred and cynic mahogany and starched propriety, thrummed with the tension of a coiled spring. Its long table, flanked by high-backed chairs, gleamed under the cold glow of gaslights, their flicker casting uneasy shadows across the faces of the assembled suspects. Hercule Poirot stood at the head, his diminutive frame commanding despite the oppressive air of 1930s London that seeped through the windows, heavy with fog and the faint tang of coal smoke. The second murder, an elderly patient, poisoned with cyanide, in a chilling echo of Sir Reginald Beaumont's death, had transformed the hospital into a crucible of fear. The killer, bold and elusive, was tightening their own noose, and Poirot's little gray cells were alight with the challenge of unraveling their deception. Inspector Japp, his face a map of frustration, stood by the door, his notebook worn from constant use. "2 murders now, Poirot," he growled, his Cockney accent sharp. "This place is a slaughterhouse, and we're no closer to nabbing the fiend." Poirot's green eyes gleamed, his mustache twitching with a faint smile. "No, mon ami, we are closer than you think. The killer, they grow reckless, and the recklessness betrays. Tonight, we weave the threads of this mystery into a tapestry of truth." He gestured to the suspects seated around the table. Dr. Elias Thorne, his angular face taut.
Nurse Evelyn Hart, her auburn hair framing tear-streaked cheeks. Matron Lydia Graves, her gray eyes cold as steel. And Victor Beaumont, his rakish charm dulled by nervous cigarette puffs. Poirot began, his voice a melodious blend of authority and calm. Mes amis, 2 lives have been snuffed out in this hospital, a place meant for healing. Sir Reginald Beaumont, a man of wealth and enemies, died by cyanide, delivered not through the vial but through a poisoned chocolate. The second victim, Madame Clara Wren, met the same fate. The clues, they are many. A scratched vial, a cryptic note, a wool thread, muddy foot neat. Almost staged. Evelyn Hart was next, her rosary beads clicking softly. Mademoiselle, Poirot said gently. Sir Reginald blackmailed you over your child, your affair with Monsieur Victor. You delivered the poisoned chocolate, unaware of its danger. Evelyn's sob was raw, echoing in the boardroom's sterile hush. I swear, monsieur, I thought it a gift. I'd never harm anyone, not even him. Poirot's eyes softened, but he pressed on. And the suicide note found in your quarters? It suggests despair. Yet it is forged, oui. Evelyn nodded, tears spilling. I didn't write it. Someone wants me blamed. A red herring, Poirot mused, designed to cast her as the broken victim driven to murder. Matron Graves faced his scrutiny with defiance. Madame, your prints are on the pharmacy log. Your access to cyanide unimpeded. Sir Reginald's rival clinic threatened your authority. A wound to your pride. Graves's lips thinned, her voice cutting. I restocked the vials, as is my duty. His clinic was a nuisance, yes, but murder? Absurd. Poirot noted her clenched fists, her motive rooted in professional rivalry and personal slight. And your whereabouts at midnight? He asked. Rounds, she snapped, as always. Yet no witnesses confirmed her claim, and Poirot's gaze lingered, sensing a crack in her armor. Victor Beaumont, slouched in his chair, flicked ash from his cigarette. Monsieur Victor, Poirot said. Your lie about the theater places you here, arguing with your uncle. His will, soon to exclude you, fuels your greed. And your affair with Mademoiselle Hart, did it drive you to act? Victor's eyes flashed. I told you, I argued and left. I didn't touch any chocolate. Yes, I needed the money, but I'm no killer. His voice trembled. Time to act, suggesting premeditation. The vial's scratch, the forged note, the planted key, all pointed to a mind weaving deception with surgical precision. The psychological tension mounted, the boardroom a pressure cooker of motives and alibis. Poirot's deduction sharpened. The crime, it is not passion but calculation. The killer knew Sir Reginald's habits, his love of sweets, his isolation in the ward. They used Mademoiselle Hart as a pawn, planting the chocolate through an anonymous delivery. He turned to Evelyn. You were manipulated, no? But by whom? Her tears fell, her voice a whisper. I don't know, monsieur. I trusted the delivery. Thorne shifted uncomfortably, his glasses catching the light. Graves' eyes narrowed, her authority challenged. Victor stubbed out his cigarette, his hand shaking. Poirot continued. The second murder. It is a desperate act, perhaps to silence a witness or to deepen the chaos. Madame Wren. She was in the adjacent ward, perhaps seeing something she should not. Jap nodded, adding, her chart shows she was awake late, complaining of noise. A cloaked figure, maybe? As accusations hung in the air, a creak interrupted. The boardroom door, slowly opening. A young nurse, pale and trembling, stood in the threshold, clutching a letter. Monsieur Poirot, she stammered. I found this in Dr. Thorne's office, hidden in a drawer. The room froze as Poirot took the envelope, its seal broken, its contents a single sheet. Reginald knows too much. End it tonight. The handwriting matched the bedside note, the telegram, the anonymous warning. Thorne leapt to his feet, his voice shrill. That's not mine. It's a plant, I swear. Chaos erupted. Graves shouted for order. Evelyn sobbed. Victor cursed. Poirot raised a hand, his calm unshaken. Silence, s'il vous plaît. This letter. It is a clue, but not the truth. The killer. They play a game of shadows, framing and deflecting. London broke with a vengeance. Its thunder rolling like a drumbeat of doom across the fog-shrouded streets. Inside Briar Lane Hospital, the air was no less charged. The boardroom's sterile confines replaced by the cavernous grandeur of the hospital's main hall, where Hercule Poirot now stood, his diminutive figure a beacon of calm amid the tempest of suspicion. The hall's high ceilings, adorned with faded frescoes of healing saints, loomed over the assembled suspects, their faces illuminated by the flickering glow of gaslights battered by the storm's gusts. Rain lashed the tall windows, each drop a staccato note in the symphony of tension that enveloped the room. The second murder, Madame Clara Wren, poisoned with cyanide in a chilling echo of Sir Reginald Beaumont's death, had escalated the stakes, and Poirot's little gray cells were alight with the urgency of unmasking the killer before they struck again. Inspector Japp, his coat damp from a brief foray into the courtyard, paced near the hall's grand staircase, his notebook clutched tightly. This is madness, Poirot, he growled, his Cockney accent thick with exasperation. 2 bodies, cyanide everywhere, and now that letter, Thorne's up to his neck in it. Poirot's green eyes gleamed, his mustache twitching with a faint smile. Non, mon ami, the letter is a shadow cast to mislead. The killer, they weave a web of deception, but the storm, it clears the air for truth. He gestured to the suspects gathered in a semicircle. Dr. Elias Thorne, his angular face pale and defiant. Nurse Evelyn Hart, her auburn hair framing a tear-streaked face. Matron Lydia Graves, her gray eyes cold as the rain outside. And Victor Beaumont, his cigarette smoke curling like a specter in the dim light. Poirot began, his voice a melodious thread weaving through the hall's oppressive hush. Mes amis, the murders of Sir Reginald and Madame Wren are no random acts. They are the work of a mind both cunning and desperate. Sweat on his brow. Greed and lies. But was he the killer or a pawn in a larger game? Evelyn Hart was next, her rosary beads clicking softly as she clutched them. Mademoiselle, Poirot said gently, you delivered the chocolate, unaware of its poison. But your despair, Sir Reginald's blackmail over your child,
Your affair with Victor, it gives you motive. Evelyn's sob echoed in the hall, raw and desperate. I hated him, monsieur, for what he did to me, to my daughter, but I'd never kill, I swear. Poirot's eyes softened, but he pressed on. The forged suicide note, it points to you. Who placed it in your quarters? Evelyn shook her head, tears spilling. I don't know. Someone wants me ruined. A red herring, Poirot mused. But her role as unwitting courier of death was undeniable. Matron Graves faced his scrutiny with icy defiance. Madame, your authority is unquestioned, yet your prints on the pharmacy log, your access to cyanide, and your resentment of Sir Reginald's rival clinic, they speak loudly. Graves' lips thinned, her voice cutting like a scalpel. I've run this hospital for 20 years, monsieur. His clinic was a slight, yes, but I'm no murderer. The pharmacy is my responsibility. My prints are expected. Poirot tilted his head. And your midnight rounds, madame? No witnesses confirm your alibi. Her eyes flickered, a crack in her armor, and Poirot noted her clenched fists. Resentment and opportunity. Her motive was as sharp as her starched apron. Dr. Thorne, his glasses glinting in the gaslight, was last. Doctor, your lab holds cyanide. Your debts press heavily, and the letter found in your office, it matches the killer's hand. Thorne's voice was shrill with protest. That letter's a lie, planted to frame me. My research uses cyanide, yes, but it's locked away. I was in my office, not the ward. Brandishing the autopsy reports. Both victims, cyanide in the stomach, no trace in the vial. The chocolate's the key, Poirot. But who had access? Poirot's eyes gleamed. Precisely, mon ami. The chocolate. It is intimate, requiring knowledge of Sir Reginald's habits. Mademoiselle Hart delivered it, but the anonymous donor, they are the architect. He revealed a new clue. A hospital log showing a delivery boy hired by a cloaked figure dropped off the parcel 2 days prior. The same figure seen near the pharmacy, Poirot said, and perhaps the one whose cloak burned in the incinerator. The psychological pressure mounted, the hall a crucible of motives and lies. Poirot's deduction sharpened. The killer, they are not alone. A conspiracy, perhaps, or a master manipulating pawns. He turned to Graves. Madame, you mocked Sir Reginald's spinsterhood, he called you. A personal wound, oui. Graves flushed, her voice low. He humiliated me, yes, but I'd never stoop to murder. Yet her alibi wavered, her authority a shield that might conceal darker deeds. Evelyn, trembling, confessed further. Victor and I, we planned to run away, to protect my daughter. Sir Reginald found out, threatened to expose us both. Poirot nodded, noting the lovers' shared motive, but Victor's panic seemed genuine. I didn't touch him, Victor insisted, his voice hoarse. I left after our row. The stolen key, Poirot suspected, was planted by another. Graves, perhaps, or Thorne, to deflect suspicion. A breakthrough came from the morgue tampering. A nurse reported a locket missing from Sir Reginald's body, engraved with a family crest. Poirot's mind raced. The locket, found in Thorne's lab during a second search, bore his initials, E.T. A family tie? Poirot asked, holding up the locket, its silver glinting ominously.
Thorne's face crumpled. It's mine, yes, but not what you think. Sir Reginald. He was my half-brother. Lingered. The storm's roar a warning. The truth was close, but the killer closer. Their next move a deadly gambit in this psychological chess game. Chapter 9. The Parlor Revelation. The storm's fury had subsided into a restless drizzle, the rain pattering against the leaded windows of Briar Lane Hospital's grand parlor like the hesitant applause of a skeptical audience. The parlor, a relic of the hospital's Victorian origins, exuded an air of faded elegance. Velvet-upholstered armchairs arranged in the semicircle around a marble fireplace, where a low fire crackled, casting wavering shadows that danced like uneasy spirits across the ornate wallpaper. The scent of damp wool and smoldering logs mingled with the ever-present undercurrent of carbolic soap, creating an atmosphere thick with anticipation and dread. Hercule Poirot stood at the center, his immaculate suit untouched by the night's chaos, his green eyes sharp as cut emeralds under the chandelier's soft glow. The poisoned tea, discovered in his quarters only moments ago, had been a brazen escalation, a direct challenge from the killer, whose audacity now bordered on recklessness. But Poirot's little gray cells were undeterred. They thrummed with the certainty that the truth, long elusive, was about to unveil itself in this very room. Inspector Japp, his face ruddy from the storm's chill, positioned himself by the door, a burly sentinel with handcuffs at the ready. "Ride, Poirot," he muttered, his Cockney accent laced with impatience. "Let's have it. You've been stringing this along like a blooming cat with a mouse. Who's the killer? Thorne with that locket business?" Poirot raised a hand, his voice a melodious counterpoint to Japp's gruffness. "Patience, mon ami. The parlor. It is the stage for revelation, non? All players must be present." He gestured to the assembled suspects, summoned under the guise of a final briefing. Dr. Elias Thorne, his angular features drawn tight, standing rigidly by the mantel. Nurse Evelyn Hart, huddled in an armchair, her auburn hair thread and charred cloak, remnants of the killer's disguise, the muddy footprints tracing an illicit path, the forged suicide note framing Mademoiselle Hart, the planted key implicating Monsieur Victor, the anonymous telegram of betrayal, and now the locket, a familial talisman that binds the past to the present. His gaze swept the room, pausing on each face, drawing out the suspense like a maestro conducting a symphony. He turned first to Victor, his tone measured but unrelenting. "Monsieur Beaumont, your lies unravel like a poorly knit scarf. The theater alibi fabricated with bribed witnesses. Your confession of argument with your uncle, timed perilously close to the murder. The stolen key in your motor car, though planted, speaks to your presence here. Greed. It drove you. Sir Reginald's will, poised to disinherit you for your wastrel ways. Did you slip the chocolate into his drawer, dreaming of fortunes?" Victor's cigarette fell to the floor, crushed under his heel as he straightened, his pale blue eyes blazing. "Damn you, Poirot. I argued with the old miser, yes, called him a tyrant for hoarding what was mine by right. But I left before midnight, stormed off to drown my rage in gin at the nearest pub. I didn't poison him. And that key, who knows who planted it? Evelyn and I, we were planning to flee, but not like this." His voice cracked, revealing the raw edge of desperation, and Poirot noted the glance toward Evelyn, a flicker of genuine affection amid the deceit. Evelyn Hart rose unsteadily,
her handkerchief twisted in her fists. "Monsieur Poirot, please," she pleaded, her Cockney lilt softened by tears. "Victor's innocent. Sir Reginald blackmailed me over my daughter, our affair. He threatened to expose us, to shatter our lives. I delivered the chocolate, thinking it a harmless gift from an anonymous well-wisher. But I swear on my child's life, I knew nothing of the poison." Poirot's expression softened momentarily, his eyes reflecting a touch of empathy. "Mademoiselle, your despair is palpable. Your role serums. The vials switch, perhaps under your watchful eye, served as distraction. And your interception of me in the archives, urging silence on buried secrets. What did you conceal?" Graves' cheeks flushed, her hands gripping the settee's arm. "I protect this institution. Secrets of the past, like that wretched Langston affair, must remain buried. But I am innocent of murder." Her defiance held, but Poirot detected the tremor in her voice, a chink in the armor of her iron resolve. Finally, Poirot's eyes locked onto Dr. Elias Thorne, who stood frozen by the fire, his white coat a stark contrast to the shadows playing across his face. "Dr. Thorne," Poirot said, his voice dropping to a grave timbre, "the threads converge upon you. Your gambling debts, a noose tightening around your neck. Sir Reginald's will, naming you beneficiary for a research fund that masks personal gain. Your midnight proximity to the ward, witnessed despite your denials. The cyanide traces in your locked laboratory, a tool from your mentor Langston's disgraced legacy. And now, the locket, engraved with your initials, containing a miniature portrait of your mother, the same woman who bore Sir Reginald out of wedlock. You are his half-brother, denied inheritance, scorned and invisible. Revenge, it simmered in your heart, fueled by years of resentment. Did you not poison him to claim what was rightfully yours?" Thorne's composure shattered like fine porcelain, his glasses slipping down his nose as he staggered back. "You? How could you know?" he whispered, his voice a hollow echo. The room held its breath as Poirot produced a sheaf of yellowed letters, retrieved from Thorne's office during the chaos of the storm. "These familial missives, Doctor, unearthed from your hidden drawer. They chronicle your mother's pleas to Sir Reginald for acknowledgement, rejected with cold disdain. The locket, pried from his body in the morgue tampering, was your desperate bid to retrieve evidence of your bond. The anonymous He seized a poker from the fire, brandishing it like a sword, lunging toward Poirot with a guttural roar. Japp sprang into action, his burly frame tackling Thorne to the ground amid a clatter of furniture. "Got you, you snake!" the inspector bellowed, wrenching the poker away and snapping cuffs on Thorne's wrists. The doctor struggled briefly, then slumped in defeat, his breaths ragged. Poirot adjusted his cravat, unruffled. "It is finished, Docteur. Your little gray cells, or lack thereof, have betrayed you." The room exhaled collectively. The fires crackled, the only sound as justice seemed to descend. Yet, as Thorne was hauled to his feet, his eyes met Graves with a final, enigmatic glance, a subtle nod, almost imperceptible. Poirot's mustache twitched, his instincts flaring. The locket, the letters, the cyanide, all fit. But a loose thread lingered. Was Thorne the sole architect, or had accomplices lurked in the shadows? Graves averted her gaze, her hands folding demurely, but Poirot's mind whirred. The poisoned tea in his room, Thorne had been in custody metaphorically, but who had access to his quarters? A final twist loomed, the parlor's shadows deepening as the drizzle outside intensified. The revelation was near, but the full unveiling awaited. Chapter 10. The Final Unveiling. The drizzle had ceased, leaving Briar Lane Hospital cloaked in a damp, pre-dawn hush, the fog of 1930s London curling like a phantom around its Gothic spires. The grand parlor, where Hercule Poirot had just exposed Dr. Elias Thorne as Sir Reginald Beaumont's murderer, still thrummed with the aftershock of revelation. The fire in the marble hearth had dwindled to embers, casting a faint, ruddy glow across the faces of the assembled. Inspector Japp, his handcuffs glinting as he gripped Thorne's arm. Nurse Evelyn Hart, her auburn hair framing a tear-streaked face now frozen in stunned relief. Matron Lydia Graves, her severe bun unraveled slightly. Traces all point to his guilt. Yet, he paused, his cane tapping softly, the sound a deliberate punctuation. The mind of Hercule Poirot, it is not satisfied. A shadow remains, a partner in this danse macabre. Japp, hauling Thorne toward the door, paused, his brow furrowed. "What's that, Poirot? You've got your man cuffed and ready for the gallows. What more's there to dig up?" Poirot's mustache twitched, a faint smile betraying his resolve. "Mon ami, the killer, he does not act alone. The poisoned tea in my quarters, left after Dr. Thorne was cornered. Someone else carried the cyanide scent. And the glance, subtle but telling, between Thorne and another in this very room. The truth, it is a mosaic, and one piece remains." He turned to Matron Lydia Graves, whose rigid posture betrayed a flicker of unease. "Madame Graves," Poirot said, his voice low and deliberate, "you have stood as the hospital's sentinel, your authority unchallenged for 20 years. Yet your alibi for midnight falters. Your fingerprints mark the pharmacy log, and your resentment of Sir Reginald, his rival clinic, his mockery of your spinsterhood, burns deep. You intercepted me in the archives, urging silence on buried secrets. Why? And that glance moments ago with Dr. Thorne. What promise bound you to him?" Graves' face paled, her hands clenching the settee's arm. "This is outrageous, Monsieur Poirot. I've dedicated my life to this institution. Sir Reginald was a thorn, yes, but I'd never stoop to murder." Her voice, usually resonant with command, quavered, and Poirot's eyes narrowed. "No, madame. You did not wield the poison, but you aided its path. The vial, switched under your oversight, was a distraction to point to Mademoiselle Hart. The chocolate, delivered through your ward's channels. And the promise, Dr. Thorne, he offered you marriage, a share of the inheritance, to secure your fear. The wool thread, the charred cloak, the muddy footprints, all trace Thorne's cloaked movements. The forged suicide note and planted key shifted blame to Mademoiselle Hart and Monsieur Victor. Madame Wren, witnessing a shadow, paid with her life. But the tea, left in my quarters, Thorne could not have placed it. Only one other had access to the guest wing's keys. Matron Graves. Graves rose, her face a mask of defiance, but her hands trembled. "You have no proof, monsieur. I controlled the pharmacy, yes, but that's my duty. The tea, anyone could have slipped in." Poirot's smile was serene, his voice cutting. "No, madame.
The hospital log. It records your entry to the guest wing at 11:30, after Thorne's exposure. And this. He produced a small vial, retrieved from the incinerator's ashes during a final search, its label half-burned but bearing Graves' initials. A cyanide vial, discarded in haste, marked by your hand. You switched the vial, allowed the chocolate's delivery, and when I grew close attempted to silence me with poisoned tea. Your motive? Not just Thorne's promises, but your own wounded pride, your fear of losing this hospital to Sir Reginald's rival. Graves collapsed into her chair, her defiance crumbling like ash. He promised me everything, she whispered, her voice breaking. Marriage, funds to save Briar Lane, a future beyond this sterile prison. I didn't kill, but I looked the other way. I switched the vial, let the chocolate pass. Her confession hung in the air, a raw wound laid bare. Evelyn's sobs turned to gasps of horror. Victor's curses filled the room, and Thorne slumped in Japp's grip, his last defense shattered. Poirot's voice softened, but his resolve was iron. The partnership. It is complete. Dr. Thorne, the architect, driven by revenge for a denied birthright and debts that crushed him. Madame Graves, the enabler, seduced by promises and her own bitterness. Mademoiselle Hart, the unwitting pawn, delivering death in innocent logic over deceit. Yet Poirot's heart was heavy, his mind reflecting on the human frailties that fueled such tragedy. The heart, he murmured, his voice barely audible. It is the deadliest poison, non? It drives us to love, to hate, to destroy. As the suspects were led away, the parlor fell silent, the fire's embers a faint echo of the night's drama. Japp clapped Poirot's shoulder, a rare gesture. You've done it again, old chap. Cleaned up this mess like nobody else could. Poirot's smile was wistful. The little gray cells, they do their work, but the cost, it is always high. He adjusted his Homburg hat, his cane clicking as he stepped toward the door. Outside, the fog lifted, revealing the hospital's spires against a gray dawn. Poirot paused, his gaze lingering on the building, its secrets now laid bare. The sinister doctor and his accomplice were unmasked, justice served, but the shadows of Briar Lane lingered, a reminder of the fine line between healing and harm. As he walked into the mist, the city stirring to life, Poirot's thoughts turned to the next puzzle, the next dance of minds. For now peace was restored, but the world, he knew, was never short of mysteries.